So creating bombs, there's the this is the sort of agenda topics for this section of the course. So we'll be talking about creating asset bombs, functional location and equipment ones. These typically are not that useful. They're sort of for like when you only have one of that type for the whole company, because they can't be shared, can't be moved, can't be copied very easily. So mostly we'll be focusing on material bombs, where you can actually take a material, let's say you have a warehouse material number for a pump that you can buy that pump. Well, that material can be created as a bomb, so all the spare parts to fix that pump can be inside the actual pump material. So you can buy the pump, or you can buy the spare parts as well. You can also create an assembly, like a virtual part where it doesn't actually exist. You can't say buy the entire pump by itself, but you want a bucket to hold those parts. So we'll be creating those virtual assemblies, and you can create sub-assemblies with that too. Alternate bombs, we'll just see how that can be created by accident, and how to avoid the problem and how to resolve the problem if it happens to you. Adding item text into a material, that's something very important. It's so that if you have special notes to go along with the material in that specific bomb, that can be put in. The adding a document into a bomb, that could be used for like maintenance manual for that equipment. So if you have 20 identical pumps, you only need to have one assembly for the parts. That would be the construction type for that would be assigned to each of those 20 pumps. And so it's only one bomb to maintain, and inside that bomb you can actually put the maintenance manual. So you have to put it in once. Functional location bombs. IB11 is the transaction code. So in the walkthrough I show this very briefly, but this isn't used very often. It's typically not best practices, like I said, unless it's a one-of situation. So this is what the screen looks like. This is what it looks like for creating an equipment bomb, IB01. It's very similar. You basically specify the equipment number, the plant, and the bomb usage. Now the validity date on these screens is important. It defaults to current date in most companies. In the configuration you can control what you want that date to be, either current date or backdated or the year 1900 if you like. And that means that whatever you create will only be visible from that date forward. It'll only be usable on orders dated that date forward. So that's why sometimes we backdate these things so we can use it on existing orders. This is the one we'll be focusing on in the walkthrough, is material bomb. So CS01, you specify the material number of that, for example, that pump, and again, make sure you have the right bomb usage, and that can be defaulted, that bomb usage in your PIDs or profile. You can have that as a default value, so it always goes in. If that's all you create, you shouldn't have to type that every time. And don't forget the validity date. Sometimes you need to backdate that. So when you actually do one of those three creation screens, then you'll encounter this screen where it shows the three tabs: the material that you want in the bomb, the documents, and general tab. So we've been focusing mostly on the material tab. So on the material tab, the bomb items, the first column item is basically your row numbers, and they increment by 10, so you can easily insert new ones in between other ones if you're adding materials later that you want to keep in the alphabetical order. So it's an arbitrary item number, just like on orders, so you can manipulate that number to change the sort order. That's the default sorted order by the item number. ICT is the item category, and the drop down, when you select the drop down in that field, as you'll see the options depending on your configuration, like the top right of the slide. So the typical ones we use most is L for stock. Now if you specify L for stock and N for non-stock, you'd have to know when you're putting the materials in whether they are of that which status. And even if you put everything in properly, when what if supply chain changes the item, say they change it from being a non-stock to a stock item, and they are able to retain the same material number, then it'll be wrong in your BOM, but it doesn't really matter because when you bring it into the order, automatically the item category is put in correctly at that point in time. So in a lot of companies, we just put L for everything because it's not 100% trustworthy that it'll be accurate. So that's what we'll be doing mostly initially. I is for eyeball. It's an assembly, a virtual part. It's not really a material in inventory. So the next column is the component. Well, that's where if you're putting materials, stock or non-stock, that's where the component number would go, material number. And the next column is the quantity column, how many you put in the BOM. Now, what that means is that becomes a default quantity when you go to buy from the BOM into an order. That'll be the default quantity. So a lot of companies, they put in the rebuild quantity. Say this is a BOM for a truck, and the item was spark plugs. If it's a 6-cylinder, then it would take 6 spark plugs. So some companies don't do that. They have a business process where they want everyone to put the quantity of 1 in all BOMs, so that when people go to order it, at that point they need to say how many they want, because they don't want the mistake of a technician, say it's an expensive part and the default quantity comes in 6 and they don't notice it and they don't change it, and they end up getting 6 when they only really wanted 1. So because of those kind of common mistakes, some companies sort of dumb it down and put quantity 1 in for everything. But then how, as a technician, when you're looking at the structure, are you going to know the rebuild quantity from looking at it? Well, we'll see about item text. That's one way you can do it. And in an actual task list, you can specify a different quantity than is what's in the BOM. So a rebuild task would actually have the rebuild quantity set. Doesn't have to match what's in the BOM. So the quantity field is important, but we'll just mostly put it 1 in this course. The units of measure basically is put in automatically by the material. When you put the material in, once you hit the enter key, the default units of measure populates. The sort string is a field that's typically left blank, but if you want to change the sort order, you have it in specific logic, like say wet end parts and then dry end parts, or however you want your parts to be organized or structured, you can put codes in the sort string field for like A, B, C, D or whatever, and then sort by that field, which we'll see how to sort later. So that's the most things we'll talk about for now about BOM items. Of course, you can copy and paste into this from Excel. Now, your column arrangements may not be the same as mine in your SAP. That is configurable either globally, so all users have the same arrangement, or by the user by user. This is my preferred column arrangement, so I can easily copy and paste from an order, from a task list, or from an Excel spreadsheet right into here. Alternate BOMs. Alternate BOMs, like I mentioned, as a warning, it happens quite often if this feature is active in your SAP client. So once you create a BOM and you save, if you accidentally hit the enter key, you'll get this pop-up in your status bar saying BOM is relevant to plant maintenance. People don't understand what that means. It just basically means that the BOM is already created, that you should have gone through the menu path to go into change mode. So if you disregard that warning and you hit enter again, because some people don't even notice the warning, they just keep on hitting enter, you'll get another warning saying alternate to added to BOM, basically saying you've just created an alternate BOM. But it actually hasn't been saved yet, so it's not really existing. If you hit enter a third time, it'll actually take you into that alternate BOM, and if you accidentally did that, you might say, hey, where are all my parts? Because all the parts that you built in the BOM that you created and saved won't be there because you're now in alternate BOM 2. So if you panic and save, then you've just created an alternate BOM. So if you actually ever do accidentally get to that stage of being in an alternate BOM, you don't want to save, just don't save. It hasn't really been created. So you exit without saving, no harm done. If, however, you do save, then it's going to say have an alternate BOM number, and when you try to go back in to change your BOM, it's going to say, well, which one? So you're going to have two BOMs. So you need to, if you don't want alternate BOMs, you should delete the secondary one, because it's only the primary BOM you actually see when you're navigating in, say, like IH01 to look at your structures. You don't even see the primary BOM. So we'll be seeing in the SAP walkthrough how this happens, how to avoid it, and also how to delete alternate BOMs. So these are the concepts we'll be talking about. You'd go into the alternate BOM, delete the materials in it, and then go to the menu path to delete the actual BOM. This feature can be disabled in configuration in SPRO. So if your company doesn't use alternate BOMs at all, then it should be disabled, so it doesn't happen by accident by planners. So we've covered creating a material BOM, basically taking an existing material, say as an example a pump or a motor, and turning it into a BOM with the spare parts inside it. Now we'll talk about the idea of a virtual BOM, what they call an assembly BOM, which can be used also for the construction type that you assign inside common equipment. So if your number ranging system for your material numbers is automatic, then you just allow the material number to be populated. You just leave it blank. Otherwise, you need to follow a naming convention for what you want to use as your code words for the material number or material code for assemblies. So we'll just use the automatic number for this demo. So you need to specify, if you have industry sector field, you need to specify that as well. So I go into MMP1 and then specify industry sector and hit the green check mark or the enter key, and you'll get this pop-up. It says what screen or what tab do you want to default to look at for creating this material. And because it's just a simple assembly, we don't need to go into all the data of an actual material. That's why we use MMP1. And so we just select the first one, basic data. Now if you want that to be a default, you can select that row and click the default setting button and save it as your default, so you don't have to specify this every time. So I hit the green check and it would take me into creating the assembly material. So when you're in the screen to create a material, this screen, like in the screenshot on the slide, the first thing of course required is the material description. Again, follow naming conventions. If this is an assembly for a construction type for an equipment, it should be the noun first, so it's pump, and then the type of pump, so submersible, then the manufacturer model number. Now if you are pumping different materials, because sometimes you need different BOMs for the pump that's pumping water versus the pump that's pumping acid, you might have different packing and different BOM requirements. So you might even have, after the model number, you might even have a code that differentiates the type of material list it needs. So if you're going to have a sub-assembly that you're creating after you create the actual pump assembly, then you could follow a naming convention for that too, such as pump, wet end. Now, if you want them to sort together, then you'd have to fit as much as you could alphabetically, like pump, sub, Gould, wet end, or something like that, so that they sort together in a list. Okay, so if once you do that, your next required field is the basic units of measure, and then of course there's a material group field. I'm not going to be discussing that in this course, but if you had a material group for assemblies or that kind of thing, you can group it by that if you had that in configuration. So once you hit save in your status bar, it'll show you the material number if you're allowing the automatic numbering system to take effect. So you don't even need to note that number down, because SAP will remember it when you go in to actually create the BOM for this assembly. So to create the BOM for that assembly, you go to CS01, that's create BOM, and you'll see that the assembly number automatically is there by default because it remembers that. You need to specify the plant you're building it for, and of course the BOM usage. And alternate BOM, you leave that blank because you're making the primary BOM. And again, the validity date, the valid from, you might want to backdate that if you're going to be using this BOM on current work orders that are maybe a couple weeks old or months old. So once you're in the screen, you hit the enter key or green check mark after you've made your changes that inside the BOM. So after you've done that and you've saved, then you take that construction type or assembly number that you're given and then put it inside associated to the equipment, which is this screen, this slide assigning to the BOM through IE02. Of course, you can use an equipment search screen to find all your equipment that have the same manufacturer model number, and then go inside that each of those equipment and go to the structure tab and put in the construction type field, that assembly number. So that can be done in bulk methods using LSMW templates, mass loading, and this is just showing you how to do them one by one. So the structure tab is where you'd put it, but then you want to see what it looks like. You'd have to save the equipment to get out and then go back in, and then with the structure button, after you've saved, you can then verify that it went in okay. You see showing that screen capture on the right hand side, it's the equipment number and the BOM inside that. Adding item text to a material when you're in CSO2 is another topic. So when you're in the BOM, you can double click on the row number, the item row number, and it takes you into the detail to display that row. And if you go to the second tab, the status long text, you have the two item texts there, which is item text 1 and item text 2, where you can type comments like things like where that material is located within that specific BOM in terms of if you have a spare or what needs to be done managing that material and that for that specific equipment. So it's notes for the technician and notes for the planner, and it will show up in any multi-level structure view like IH01. If you're configured in S-Pro to show that globally, it'll show up like item text display like you see in the bottom of the slide, item text 1 and item text 2. If it's not configured globally in S-Pro, then you'd have to teach all your users to do it themselves through the menu path, which that'll be covered in the SAP walkthrough. Adding a document into a BOM is another topic. So when you're inside a BOM in CSO2, you can select the document tab, and the reason why you have a separate tab is because you have independent column arrangements for documents rather than materials, and there's a button that you can set as default, or configuration folks can set that globally as a default column arrangement. So you normally scroll to the bottom to the first blank row, and if you want to have the documents as the first row, you just put the item number as 0005 and item category is D for document, and then instead of pasting or typing a document number, you'd use the drop down to search for it. The beauty of doing it that way is when you search and you identify the document number and hit enter, it'll populate all of the other fields. And if you don't like the standard search engine inside CSO2, this drop down button, you can use CV04N to do more complex searching for documents, and then copy the number and go into this search and paste it, and it'll bring up the document and all the information will go in. So after you add a document into a BOM and you save, right, then the row number would automatically sort it to the top. Oh, by the way, if you have more than one document, you could have a assembly, like a folder called documents or manuals, whatever, and put all your documents into that so it's not so messy. And the reason why I like it at the top is that when you're adding more materials to a BOM, it's not pushing the document down off the screen. So this is one way of doing it, like to put a document against the equipment. And the beauty of putting it into the BOM is like on the screenshot, you'll see it when you're looking in the structure list, like IH01, you'll see that there's a document or a folder for documents. and you can just double click or use the magnifying glass to open it, and then double click or eyeglasses to view the document. And the beauty of doing it in the BOM, if you have a construction type BOM like this, say for 20 same type of pump, you only have to build it that once. You only have to put the manual in once, and it will show up in all BOMs of all those equipment. Because the other way that's covered in a DMS course, document management, is you can assign the document right to the equipment. So it'll be connected to the equipment master. A couple of ways of doing it, but then you have to do it to every single equipment, which also can be done in bulk, so that would make it so it's not that onerous. So this is adding a document to a BOM. So we just go on to the next slide.